Okay, this video is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Yes, we have Patreon supporters now, guys. Like I said, I put it in a community post. That really wasn't my idea. However, we had some people who wanted to be Patreon supporters. And so we decided we were going to go ahead and go that route. And these are our first two Patreon supporters. We have Brian Proxmeyer and Jacob Elbick Gigard Pedersen. I'm sure I 100% pronounced that name wrong. I am so sorry. I may just call you Jacob Elbick. Those are our two Patreon supporters.
Wait a second. You said Patterson? We have a Patterson.
No. I said Pedersen. Pedersen, not Patterson.
You mean like the Pedersen
Like
device?
the Pedersen device. Do you have a Pedersen device laying around that we can throw into a 1903 Springfield?
Well, I gotta go get it, but...
Oh, okay. Anyhow, thank you guys. We appreciate it so much. Now, on with the show. Well, everybody out there, welcome to another episode of the 11 Bang Bang channel. I'm your host, Ethan Woods, and today we are doing a very long-anticipated video that a lot of you have asked about here recently, and that is, which one is really better? The Pederosoli flintlocks or the Military Heritage flintlocks? And kind of a special treat for you guys today, we have got the standard, an original that's been converted over to percussion cap. Yes, this one is in very rough shape, but it should do the job for comparing for which one is more closer to original styling. That being said, here's my disclaimer. The Indian Military Heritage brown bess is a long land pattern, or just a land pattern, depending on what time period you're in. The Pederosoli is a second land pattern musket, so it's not the same as the long land pattern. And the original, which I used to think was a short land pattern, but now after I've been looking at it some more, I believe this is actually a new land pattern. So yeah, that being said, let's go ahead and let's get into this and try to compare. And so the way I'm going to rate these guns is between 1 and 10. 1 being very far below average, 5 being about average, what I'd consider average, and 10 being extraordinarily above average. Here's a little hint, I'm probably not going to give out any 1s or any 10s today. There's going to be a lot more of those other numbers in the middle. So let's go ahead and let's start talking about what I think of these guns and what my history with these guns is. And I will start out with the Military Heritage. This was the first flintlock that I ever fired. This was the first flintlock we had here on the channel. I haven't counted the rounds out of this one, but it's been fired probably more than most of your other muskets that you see out there. This gun has been shot a lot, and I really do like this musket. There is a video of me on YouTube with this musket in particular making a 200-yard shot on a silhouette target, actually a slightly smaller silhouette target. Oh, got him! And so I really do have a lot of experience with this gun, and I really do love it. That being said, let's move on to the second one, the Pederosoli. Now, for those of you who don't know, this Pederosoli is actually already quite famous on YouTube, and that is because we bought this from Duke Frazier, and he's already shot it quite a few times. Matter of fact, if you type in Pederosoli brown bess, this is going to be the first gun that's going to show up in your search engine on YouTube. So I've ran roughly about 150 rounds to this gun so far. I'm just kind of starting to get it broke in. Yeah, it's been running phenomenally, and we'll get into that though here in a second. And my history with the original is I bought this gun for like 150 bucks a long time ago, and yeah, I've never shot it, and I probably won't ever because this stock is broken into little bitty pieces, and I'm not a big percussion cap guy. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, let's go ahead and, as Caleb would say, start off with markings. So what am I talking about markings? I'm talking about proof markings, that little bit extra that you put on the gun that just makes it seem a little more interesting. And out of this one, the Military Heritage, you can see we actually got our GR markings. We've got our Crown X, Crown 6, Tower marked lock, GR, Yeah, the markings on this gun are actually really phenomenal. It's just that little bit of extra, like I said, guys. It doesn't really help the gun too much, but it's just kind of cool. Now let's go ahead and talk about the Pederosoli. Now the lock plate on this gun, the markings are beautiful. It's got a nice Grice 1762 marking on it. But however, when we go and we actually look at the barrel, the only markings on the barrel are the actual Italian proof markings and black powder only, Italy 16, Pederosoli caliber 75. Yeah, there is that. It's kind of a little bit of a detractor for me. So, yeah, it's whatever. But let's go ahead and I will say in the markings category, as Caleb would say, I would give because the markings on the lock on this Pederosoli are actually really nice, I'd give it about a 3. And on the Military Heritage, because they actually went ahead and did the extra step on this barrel, I would go ahead and give it a 7. Now, mind you, that is between these two guns. Not all guns are going to be the same. So, anyhow, let's move on. I'm going to go over actual build quality. So, let's start off with the Pederosoli on this one. The build quality on this gun is very nice. You can measure out the bore of this gun, and it measures out at exactly 750. It is an exact 75 caliber. The wood is actual walnut, and so whenever you're kind of putting and taking out your pins, which your pins are actually already slightly beveled. I've taken this barrel out several times and I haven't split the wood out yet, which is always very nice, and the pins are a lot harder on this gun. The only issues I really have is this gun. I've noticed some of the castings actually look a lot like what you would expect to see on some Military Heritage guns. The castings aren't near as good as a lot of people make them out to be. I see a few spots where it's kind of filled in, and I really should get a file in there and clean those out like I do on my Military Heritage guns. But other than that, there is also the issue of the finish, which looks really nice and shiny, but I'm going to tell you this, I'm actually going to strip this finish off because you actually scratch it off with your fingernail. This is the same kind of stuff that they put on these Military Heritage guns, I swear. And with a nice walnut stock underneath, you can bet I'm going to get rid of this whatever shellac they put on top, and we'll go with some nice tung oil or linseed oil or something like that. So the build quality on the Pederosoli, it's actually pretty good. I'd give it about a 6 to a 7. So we'll just say 6, about a 6. Moving on to the Military Heritage guns, this is one of the issues that comes with these guns. It's kind of a roll of the dice. The wood, for instance, on some of these guns can be fantastic, like on All Char. However, this one you can tell that they've got heartwood and sapwood meeting up here right at the lock plate. Now, has that caused any issues? No, but it is just kind of ugly. Same. I mean, really, there's still some issues on the Military Heritage guns. There's still some issues on the Pederosoli guns too, so yeah, I'm not really going to go one way or the other too much on that one. What I will go one way or the other with on is the idea of inletting, which on these guns has been kind of hit or miss. This one's not too bad, but you can just see there's some spots where it wasn't too great, shall we say. One more thing with the Military Heritage guns that's kind of a detractor is they're not always exactly what they should be for the caliber. I think this one, which is supposed to be a 75 caliber, is actually a .746, if memory serves me right. So it's very close. It's like a 74.5 caliber. So, but that being said, the original Brown Besses, they also varied a lot in barrel size. As a matter of fact, if you go check out our friend Rob at British Muzzleloaders channel and you watch his video on the history of the Brown Bess, it was actually the job of junior officers to go ahead and make sure that the ammunition they were getting for their muskets actually fit the musket. So for overall build quality, I would probably give the Military Heritages about a, I don't want to really say they're less than average because this is kind of the average gun. I'd say about a 5. So there you go. So there you have it. The Pederosoli, it is a better built musket. I'm just going to say that right here and right now. Okay, so let's move on to another topic, and that is reliability. So I had to actually think about this and add it up, but the official number I fired out of this gun myself is 136 rounds, and Duke Frazier has fired, I think he said, anywhere from 25 to 30 rounds out of this gun. And out of that 136 rounds, I have had 4 misfires. 1 was a standard, just regular flintlock misfire. 2 were when the first flint that we had on here started to finally get dull enough that we just changed it out. And then the last one was kind of me not putting enough powder in the pan. This gun is extremely reliable. I go to shoot this gun and I almost am guaranteed to get a gunshot going down range whenever I pull the trigger. And that being said, let's go on to the military heritage. This gun is actually kind of typical of what you would see with an original, in my opinion, because we've got several originals, and I've shot that original Revolutionary War musket a few times, and you get about probably 1 in 10 misfires. If you keep your, obviously your flint's good and everything, that's about the best you're going to get out of these as of now. That being said, old Char was just about as reliable as that Pederosoli when I first got her. The problem is that I've shot that gun so much that I'm worn through the case hardening on the hammer. And I'm starting to wonder if that might not be the case with this one as well. So for reliability, I'm going to go ahead and give the Pederosoli a 8. And once again, I'll give the military heritage a 5 because it's about average compared to what I have experienced with the original. Now let's go to the next subject, which is, I could have once again tied this kind of in with the barrel markings, which is which one of these muskets is closest to the original and which one is the most historically accurate. Well, for that one, I want to go ahead and start out with this short land pattern from Pederosoli. And it's pretty good, but obviously, like I was stating before, we have no replica proof marks on the barrel. We have this black powder only stamp on the billboard on the side of the barrel. And I have kind of gone through this gun and I've noticed some things. For instance, if we take out the rammer here, which once again, that rammer, I don't have an original Brown Bess rammer, but that thing is very thick. It is a very stiff rammer. But if you look in the rammer channel here on the bottom, you will actually see that they machined the wood out from the bottom. And if you take this barrel off, you can actually see that they have basically keys dovetailed into the bottom of this barrel with slots cut into them. It is very CNC machining. And there's really nothing wrong with that from a shooter's perspective. Matter of fact, it's probably a better design. But that is one of the things that's not correct for a Brown Bess. Another thing, and I'm not sure if it's actually an issue, but I'm noticing that the sling swivels are blued. I don't know if the British military blued their sling swivels on their short land patterns, but there is that. Also, one thing going for the Pederosoli in its favor is barrel thickness. The barrel on this gun is actually fairly thin, making it kind of a light gun. And if we look at the original here that I have right here, we will also notice that the barrel is relatively thin, kind of like the Pederosoli. If you look at the military heritage gun, it's fairly thick. So there is that. We'll kind of count that in there with it. So now another thing though is this. This is a military heritage bayonet, by the way, and it was funny because we tried it on the Pederosoli, and everybody talks about they hate these because they're so loose. We tried it on the Pederosoli, and you can see how loose this thing is. It is legitimately would not probably work on this gun too well. But if we put it on the original, that is a beautiful fit. Like, there's a little wiggle to it. You can see, obviously, there's going to be a little wiggle to it, but that's not bad at all. So that tells me that Pederosoli is doing something different with their barrels. Their barrels are a little bit, the outer diameter of the barrel is a little bit off. So we've got several points going against the Pederosoli in this aspect, and at least one going for them in their barrel thickness. So yeah, the Pederosoli has some issues with it in the historical accurate department. But that being said, military heritage is not safe either, because if we look at this land pattern musket here, if you look at original long land patterns, you will notice that it should have a drop, a pretty significant drop right here in the lock plate. It's called the banana-shaped lock. And this one has a small drop. You can barely notice it, but it's not correct for that. So there is that. That's a pretty big one, actually. But they did get the lock plate on the side here, right? So did Pederosoli. But they rounded out their lock plate, which is correct for a long land pattern. And if we look underneath the barrel, you will see that there are no cutouts machined out in the bottom of the wood here. Just like the original, they went in from the top and they put what they call loops, which are basically they're soldering on pieces of brass with a hole drilled through it that you put your pin through, which honestly is probably not as good of a design as the key method that I'm seeing, the dovetailed pieces of steel in the Pederosoli. But if you are into that whole kind of thread counting thing and reenacting, I kind of noticed something like that. Also, the rammer thickness. This one is much thinner. That's a lot closer to what I see on original rammers on Brown Besses. Now, like I said, I really haven't handled, I'd always thought I'd handled a short land pattern, but the more I look at this gun, I'm pretty sure it's a new land pattern. But you can see that this rammer has been cut down, but what is left of it, it's actually relatively thin, kind of like the military heritage here. So for historical accuracy, I've got to dock the Pederosoli on a few minute things, namely not having really any proof, like replica proof markings on the barrel, cutting out their slots underneath the barrel, putting keys in and dovetailing them in, just things like that. And there's something weird about that barrel diameter. I would go ahead and give this gun a 5, just because when you hold it up and you look at it like this and you look at an original, it looks right. It's when you really start digging into it that you start finding issues. Military heritage. Once again, I do like how they even got the correct design here on this side lock plate. They got the ramrod size right. However, some of these guns, that's pretty big actually if you start looking into it. So actually I would say that I would give a lot of military heritage guns, I kind of just want to give them a 5.2, because the Charleville that I have is actually very close to the original. And then I'm looking at things like the Paget carbine that I'm getting that I'm going to have to defarb, which has a lot of issues. So once again, it kind of just depends on which gun you get. But so I would say that just they're not going to be perfect. They're not going to be just like the original. But that being said, if I pick them up, the one that I feel is the closest, like whenever I just go ahead and grab it, is going to be the military heritage gun. And that all has to do with A, I don't have the big black powder only billboard on the barrel, and B, just the originals kind of had almost like this build quality, to be quite honest. They're built in shops and they're built in a hurry. They're not exactly built on CNC machines back in the day. So another thing that Kayla pointed out that's kind of interesting, I completely forgot about, is we always talked about how that front sight was canted, or front sight, just the sight in general, was canted on the military heritage gun. What's funny is if you look at this Pederosoli real close, it is also slightly canted off to the left. So, yeah, there is that. Yeah, the military heritage one is straight now. So let's go to our final talking point here, and that is price and availability. This is a very important one to me, and I'll go into that here in a little bit. But for now, suffice to say that the original, you didn't have to pay too much for it back in the day because you got issued it. Just a little dry humor there, guys. All right, Pederosoli. These guns, I am having a hard time trying to price them, but they usually run, I believe, around $1,200, I think. Either $1,200 to $1,400. So there is that. And again, this is one that you got to kind of go and get on Pederosoli's website, get the catalog from them, get the catalog shipped to your house, or I don't know if they do it online or whatever, and then order it that way. Let's go to the military heritage guns, which for a long gun, I believe it is $5.99 with $70 shipping. So it's about $670 for a long gun to come to your doorstep. That also handles all the taxes and everything else. So $670 versus $1,200 to $1,400. You're going to be paying about half as much for a military heritage gun as you would end up paying for one Pederosoli. And that's kind of something I'm going to get into right now is it worth it? Like I said, let's add up all the stuff that we've talked about here recently. Is this gun good as built? No. Is this gun more historically accurate? Can be. Some of them definitely not. Does this gun shoot well? Oh yeah, they shoot well. Like I said, it's not quite as reliable. That Pederosoli, that thing is insanely reliable. However, I don't know if I would say it's $600 to $700 more reliable. If you wanted a gun for like hunting or something where you really want a very, very, very reliable gun. Oh, and the lock time on that Pederosoli. Oh, it is fast. It is lightning quick. Like they got that locked down to a T. These are kind of slower. Just going to get that out there. But $600 to $700 more for a faster lock and a more reliable lock. I don't know. You be the judge. You could literally buy about 2 of these guns for one of those Pederosolis. And you might get one like Old Char, which in her heyday, back before I about worn through all the hammer on that gun, she was just about as reliable as the Pederosoli. So, yeah, just think about that. But the pricing is out of this world different. And the Brown Bess ain't the only one that Pederosoli offers. They've offered some other ones that really get up there in price. And that's kind of the nice thing about military heritage is they make it simple. Oh, you want a long gun? Cool, $5.99 plus I think it's $70 shipping. Carbine or carbine or however you pronounce it, $5.79 with the same shipping as the long gun. Oh, you want a handgun? $3.50 I believe. It's been a while since I've ordered a handgun from them. So there is that. It's very, very, very much cheaper to go the military heritage route. But however, like I said, if you want the nicer gun, I would say to go with Pederosoli. So one last thing I'd like to add to the availability of these guns is where you live can dictate what you can have. Let's put it that way. I don't have a whole lot of experience in this. I am, after all, an American, and if you couldn't tell, we like our guns. There are some countries, states, and even cities that have some gun laws, even on something like a flintlock musket. Trust me, it's ridiculous. But that's the cool thing about the military heritage guns. Purdy macaroni, they don't have a touch hole. So while I'm not saying to go and buy one of these guns if you are not allowed to have it and drill the touch hole, I'm just saying if you wanted to have a very closely, historically accurate replica of a flintlock musket and you couldn't have one generally, you could probably still have one of these without the touch hole as a wall hanger basically. So that is in and of itself pretty cool. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the official score. Now, let me tell you my personal opinion. If I'm going out into the woods and I'm going to want to go deer hunting, something like this is going to be very nice because I know it's going to go off when I pull that trigger. I know that the tolerances are perfect. This is very nice. And I'm not saying don't take your military heritage guns out into the woods and go deer hunting. I've done it myself. Matter of fact, Old Char gets to go deer hunting, pheasant hunting, quail hunting. If you hang around, you'd realize, if you knew me personally, you'd realize how much of a part of my life Old Char really has become. This one's going to be more reliable. So if I had one of these and I didn't have Old Char, I would 100% feel confident with taking that out in the woods. However, this is what I want to touch on. the gatekeeping in the black powder community. The people saying, get a Pederosoli or don't get anything else. Don't ever buy one of them Indian Bombay pipe bombs. If it wouldn't have been for places like Military Heritage and Robert from Military Heritage, I would have never have gotten into flintlocks. I'm sorry to say that, but it is true. I would have stayed in the modern era because I would look at prices on guns like Pederosolis and stuff like that, and automatically it turned me away. I'd never fired a flintlock before, but I was like, why would I spend that much money on a single shot black powder gun? And then I saw the Military Heritage offering. I'm like, okay, that we could afford. So that was the route we went, and we were hooked ever since then. So this Pederosoli has got a Military Heritage gun to thank for it being here on this table today. So that is one thing I would like to add into this is which one is more beginner friendly? And I would say that this one is going to be a lot easier to get running off the bat. However, this one is going to be more affordable, and it's going to turn a lot more people into the wonderful sport of flintlock shooting. So that is about enough of me rambling on. I think it's time we bring this video to a close. Those are my thoughts. Those are my opinions. I know there's a lot of people who are going to disagree with what I have to say here. You can go ahead and voice your opinion. That's perfectly fine. I may have voiced mine right back at you, though. So just be warned. So, as always, thank you for watching. Trust in God and keep your powder dry. Bye.